I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Bill Eames, who is an instructor with the Center for Self-Governance. He's based in New Jersey and brings business, trade association, reporter, teacher, and public policy experience to his applied civics instruction for everyday citizens. In 2011, he ran against a former governor for New Jersey State Senate. He's served as the executive director of both the New Jersey Tooling and Manufacturing Association and the Greater Atlantic City Chamber of Commerce. In both positions, he worked with members of the New Jersey legislature on major public policy issues. He also served as vice president of public affairs for the Greater Newark, New Jersey Chamber of Commerce. He worked as a news director of several radio stations and later taught language arts and U.S. history to public middle schools. Bill served our country as a captain in the United States Air Force, and he continues to serve our citizens today. Thank you for being with us, Bill Eames.
Thank you, and I want to thank Tracy and Diane. How many of you have children or grandchildren? Okay. I do what I do for a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, who are my grandchildren. We live in a great, great nation, greatest nation on earth, but we have forgotten a lot about the relationships and about the participation that was built into the system by our founders. So I'm going to do a couple of things. I need your feedback a little bit. I'm going to ask some questions, and a little bit different than some of the other speakers, I'd like you to answer when I ask you some questions, okay? So first off, anybody know the slogan of Nike?
Just do it.
Just do it. That's probably the one thing that 90% of our citizenry today don't do. I got an email the other day from a friend, a person who has serious interests in what happens to our nation. And she said, well, I'm mostly a thinker. You know, somebody needs to do something. That's the problem. But remember, we won the revolution with only 3% of the population doing it, all right? But we need to get to the 3%. So the one message I really want to convey is you individually need to engage. How do you do that? The Center for Self-Governance provides training. We don't just lecture, we don't teach. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit educational foundation, but we train you individually, each person. Our commitment is to you personally. To engage with your governance, we teach you what that means, how to do it, no prior experience necessary. So I welcome you to join in a journey. What is your relationship to government? What does that look like? As the governed, do you avoid? Do we disengage? Do we sit home? Do we throw sneakers at the TV screen? Do we go to a rally, or when an issue comes up, do we simply blog? I know so many folks that spend hours and hours at the computer keyboard. But does that really fit in with the system that was designed by our founders? Do you try to take back power? How many people feel the government has too much power? Look around the room, look at the hands. Keep your hands up for a second, okay? How many people believe the government has too much power? The government does not have too much power. It doesn't. It can't physically. If I ask you to give me your power, your heart, put it in my hand, does that do me any good? I can't take your power away from you. It would die. It would give me nothing. I would turn your power off. The government cannot take your power. But what it does have is control. So we need to reorient our minds, and part of the training that we do really is to take an entirely different perspective on things. A year ago, I had a physical, and my doctor took an x-ray of my chest, and he saw a spot, and he didn't like that. So he sent me to have a CAT scan. Now, CAT scan looks at exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Nothing changed in here, but it looks at it from an entirely different perspective. And what the CAT scan saw was a bone spur that was kind of overshadowing the lung, made it look like there was a problem. He says, "You're getting old, you know." We need that perspective change. So as governed, do you seek to avoid engagement? Do you seek to try and take back your power? Do you just vote in campaigns and by doing so think that that is having an impact? Do we simply support political parties? You know, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Libertarian. I support this candidate, I support that candidate. Sometimes do we lobby? Do we send a letter to a legislator? Do we catch him at a major conference where he is for a second and say, I really think you need to do something? Those are components, but they're issue focused, and they do not engage effectively. We tend to overthrow government. Let's see. We had Harry Reid and we had Nancy Pelosi in control of our Senate and House, and then we overthrew them. How much changed? 0. Not much. So that's an indicator that we don't understand the system. We can have more influence and power and impact than you would in your wildest dreams imagine. When Stacy and Diane began to get involved, they had no clue how much influence individual citizens can have. I'm here to tell you folks, I did everything you could do. I wrote letters, I went to rallies, I spoke with congressmen, I ran for office, my wife ran for office, I had zero impact. But once I learned the tools and the strategies and the techniques that the Center for Self-Governance teaches, wow. When I say sit, my political jurisdiction government sits. It really can be done, and it can be done faster and cheaper and with less investment of time than you could wildly imagine. What are your assumptions about government? Do you assume that politicians are corrupt, that it has too much power, or that it needs more power? Our system or type of government, what is it? What are we told? 2 weeks ago, one radio show, 30 minutes, a newscast, I heard my president, I heard Paul Ryan, I heard my state senators all say, we live in a democracy. We don't live in a democracy. But are we going to keep or lose what we do have? Many of us, and Diane mentioned this, we may know. How do I know that I live in a republic? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. But how many can define what a republic means? It's been taken away from us. And not just you, but 5 generations before you. And it really wasn't accidental. Keeping and losing. Keeping the republic is what was the challenge to Elizabeth Powell, but we've been losing the republic. This thing goes on a long timeline. I'm not going to ask you to try and memorize these points. I'm just trying to really quickly illustrate it. 1787, September 17th, they just finished the Constitution. A republic, if you can keep it, were the words that Ben Franklin left Elizabeth Powell with. She could not vote, she could not hold office. How to do that? This is a timeline and a look at what a republic has looked like in the years since. In the 1830s and the 1860s, something changed. We began to hear from Woodrow Wilson and others a different philosophy. All of our presidents up until that point in time had used the word republic in their inaugural addresses. After that time, none did. To be that consistent, is that accidental? So we began a path towards losing the republic because we forgot what it is. We began the path of keeping the democracy. In the 1900s, we began to move forward. At the bottom, what did we lose when we left England? We lost a monarchy. In the 1930s, 1960s. Remember what happened in the 60s with Lyndon Johnson? The Great Republic, the Great Society. Remember, which did he use? Around 2010, 4 people in Tennessee were going into Washington and protesting what they had seen. These folks were military in background, so they'd had some background in strategy and in ideas and about how things are happening. They saw 1 million people. Well, CNN said it was 30,000. But they saw 1 million people walking up Pennsylvania Avenue toward the Capitol. How many, anybody here in that? All right, 30,000 people? You remember? Shoulder to shoulder, front to back. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I was there as well. But when we were there, we said, what now? Okay, we're unhappy. What now? There was no what now. We teach what now. 2016 today, we've begun a different path. We are keeping the republic. Center for Self-Governance began with 4 folks in Tennessee. Today, more than 4,500 individuals have taken courses in 32 states. All right? We want you to learn. This is not a sales pitch, okay? We lose money every time we teach. What we want to gain, what we want to keep, is the republic. Okay? Please, for little Audrey, for little Cole, I need your help. I need you to engage. Keeping the republic is a goal, all right? Keeping the democracy is what we have been trained to do. It's what our children are being trained to do. How much control do people have in a democracy? What is the form, all right? Democracy is ruled by majority, ruled by majority. Actually, it's ruled by majority of those who participate. All right? If you look at an election, the majority of those who participate, if you take the population of South Carolina, it works down to about 6.6%. Is that a majority? But you're told that it is. Right? What do people do in a democracy to influence their control over their government? How do they do that in a democracy? Majority rule, how do they do that? They vote, okay? How often do you vote? Once a year? Once every other year for the House of Representatives? So that's maybe 20 minutes. Let me think, 525,600 minutes in a year. We devote 20 minutes to voting every other year. Very, very small percentage of influence. Why do you feel like you can't have influence over your government? Well, there's an answer for you. Okay? Keeping the democracy.
Tonight, we are going to witness the most anticipated match in the history of professional wrestling.
Mixed metaphor.
For the heavyweight championship of the world. Are you ready? Wrestling fans, are you ready? For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, from the capital city of the United States of America, Washington, D.C., ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
What's happening this November? Okay? The Reds, the Blues, okay? Interesting. Now, we'll show you this illustration again in a second, but I want you to consider that what has happened is we have been pitted against one another. We have been divided. We have become, instead of we the people, we have become we the pieces. So all of our energies, all of our time, talent, all of our effort is geared against one another. You've heard many philosophers over the years talk about how much we have in common versus how little we have that differs. And yet, all of us know full well, I asked this question last night, what are the two things you're not allowed to talk about at the dinner table or in mixed company? Politics and religion. What are the only two things that were discussed in the time of the founders in public or at the dinner table? Politics and religion. Think about that. Think about that. How dramatic a change, okay? Keeping the republic. So if you look at what that was, it showed we, the pieces on the left, fighting one another on the field of battle. Does that sound a little bit like, let me think, those folks that want to fight Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton, or those that might say Ted Cruz versus Trump? You know, we lose friendships these days over a difference of opinion on an election. We will break up families. We will put ourselves in positions where we will never talk to long-term friends again over those kinds of differences. One of the things that discussion about religion and politics at the dinner table and in mixed company did was it taught the American people that they could disagree on opinion, but hold a common principle of a republic, of a desire to have a nation in which each person's ability to disagree with one another would be protected. We've lost that. Very, very dangerous thing. And yet we don't even realize what it is that's been happening to us. And that is one of the core pieces that the Center for Self-Governance courses teach. We do 5 levels. We do it it takes roughly 7 hours per level to do it, so it's an extended program. But at the end of it, you as an individual are empowered with the ability to influence your government directly. You will be trained. You'll have experiences using strategy and tactics so that you are no longer uncomfortable engaging. You won't be. You'll feel perfectly at home in the process. You'll be able to put for yourself goals and objectives, and you'll be able to figure out strategies to make those things happen. And the goal is not to overthrow the government. We did that once. We threw England out. And what did we do? We went all the way to the other end of the spectrum and created anarchy under the Articles of Confederation. 13 individual sovereign states who had to unanimously agree before they could do anything. And Rhode Island didn't even come to the meetings. So we went to anarchy. It didn't work. We had seen tyranny. That didn't work either. We sought balance. And so we, the people, in order to form a more perfect union, overthrew our own government without violence and wrote the Constitution. And in the Constitution, one of the key factors, as was said before, Thomas Jefferson cited, was self-governance. What is that? How do you apply that? The goal is not to overthrow centralized governance. We did that once. It didn't work. We want centralized governance. We simply want it balanced. So we have a role. Our self-governance is our participation to keep that in balance, and that is what's missing. Self-governing uses liberty, your ability to speak, your civic authority, your capability, something that we still have in this nation. Maybe not for long, but your capability to influence government, to preserve and share management of our governance system. It's not overthrow. It requires habit. How do you develop a habit? How do you break a bad habit? That's the hard one. Anybody try and break a bad habit? I'm not very good at that, okay? But we will help you along that path. Practice. if you're going to run a marathon, you don't just say, you know what, I'm going to do it, and you go out and run it the first day. You don't even have the right shoes. You have to practice. You have to do small exercises to prepare yourself, a little bit more each time so that you feel comfortable with it. By the time you run your first marathon, you're pretty comfortable with the idea because you've had habit, practice, and long training. We will provide for you, if you take the courses, the training, the strategy, the tactics, the ideas. We will get you to that point where you are capable, but we will not tell you what you are going to do. We're not like all those other organizations that say, here's our objective, you help us do it. It's your objective, and we'll help you do it. Self-governing involves learning the system, building relationships. How many of you, show of hands, will get in the course of a month, let's be conservative here, a phone call from your elected official, personal, not a survey, not recorded, personal phone call, saying, here's what I think we need to do. What's your thought on what I'm asking you? Personal phone calls? One? Okay. Does that ever happen to you, Diane or Debbie? Do you ever get personal phone calls from your elected officials asking you your opinion?
Well, now I do. Now we have the CSG training. They ask us all the time.
Yep. You will get those kinds of calls because we will show you how to exert your influence, your social relations involving strategy to gain authority. Okay? Identify blurs and breaches in the system. What's a blur and a breach in the system? It's when somebody like your governor goes over the boundary line and talks with somebody like your Senate president, works a private deal, and you're not in the dealing, okay? So we will do game planning. We will show you how to do strategy thinking. We will show you how to engage in the game. It's a very simple process, and we even do it with a money-back guarantee. We want you as individuals to be able to self-govern. It's what Ben Franklin said to Mrs. Powell. Thank you very much, and thank you for helping my little 4-year-old granddaughter and my 6-year-old son have a future that I'll be proud of. Thank you.